click that, and now it shows the hidden, but they're not marked as interviewed anymore.
Okay, yeah. So that's very confusing.
So hidden and not hidden, it's a good thing. It allows them to, I don't know, maybe we want to rephrase or whatever, but it allows you to fix that stuff, but or to kind of show and hide applicants, but it doesn't need to overwrite the status.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah? So that's just a problem with this whole thing needs to be separated out. All three of these things need to be separated out.
Mm-hmm.
Hidden status and comments all need to be separated into their own entity as opposed to all tied in together.
Yeah.
And if you look at the database, it's even more tied in together. So anyway, so that's what's going on there. I don't know how we can figure out a better way of doing that.
Yeah.
So really, I don't know if that'd be filter or not, but then we do want to keep these two filters.
Okay.
So whether we want to keep them in this thing or not, it really just depends on how you want to lay it out. I mean, things are obviously going to change once we do the buckets.
Yeah.
So now Shannon did say. I mean, Shannon's number one goal is to get this thing to a point to where he can start selling it.
Mm-hmm.
That's been the problem the whole time. Is it's never really. There's always bugs in here. So the key is to get these bugs out, so you can start selling it, and then we can build in new functionality.
Mm-hmm.
He said that buckets, if it's going to take a while to do the buckets, then we can hold off on the buckets until after we get the important stuff fixed, so they can get a release, because he needs to be to start selling it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the sorting out the database, sorting out the function is important, and then we can do a UI update, piece by piece, and people will kind of feel, oh, it's refreshed, that type of idea.
Absolutely, and that's the problem. The biggest problem we have right now with the system is it's got a lot of bugs.
Yeah,
it doesn't just. I would say I was basically just completely taken out of it. I initially designed the Getmebacktowork database, the one that you were working with.
Mm-hmm.
But back when Rodney and the Indian developers, I was pretty much told not to mess with the code, don't look at the code, and don't mess with the database. So they basically took my database model and really just ripped it apart, to where things just don't make sense at all. I mean, there's just, like, you can only have one employer user with an employer, the way they've structured it. They've just really done a lot of hacking to the database to where stuff just doesn't, good and well that there's no way it can be solid.
Yeah, it can be functional or scalable if it doesn't, make sense.
Yeah, or scalable, and so there's a lot of bugs and a lot of things in here that just don't work.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the key. It's just to try to get this thing cleaned up to the point where it'll work. And that's kind of what I was telling Shannon. What I like about the way you were working is these developers in the past, the Indians, they didn't give a flip about the quality.
Yeah.
Did stuff. And then there were several times I would write specs, and I'd take a look at, and it would be so off that I would look in the code to kind of see why it was off, what was really going on. And it was clear laziness.
Like, yeah, it's about accomplishing it's about accomplishing kind of what an uneducated user could just figure as working instead of really having.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Exactly right. And I would find, like, for instance, I would say, okay, we need a field called, miles willing to commute, or I think it was data available start or something like that. We need that field in the database. Employers need to know that.
Mm-hmm.
And I started looking. I was like, they do have this field now. I'm seeing it on the screen. I was like, but it does not seem to be working. So then I started looking at the code, looking at the database, and realized that all they had done, instead of going through the system, because if you add a new field, you add it in the database, and you go and add it in the service layer.
Mm-hmm.
You have to add it in several places to map it everywhere.
Yeah.
What they did was they added a screen on the web, on the UI.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Mapped it to a field that already exists in the database that wasn't nearly related.
Yeah. And
the only reason you would do that is because you're just trying to get away with something.
Yeah, you just want to show it and not have any back end to support it.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So that was what we were getting there. And then the issue we had with the group in Bolivia, they cared. But they didn't test any of the stuff because they knew I was going to come back behind them, and so every single time they would do something, it'd be very, very buggy. It's like they wrote the code and didn't even attempt to run it to see if it worked.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I remember liking about you is you didn't have to do a lot of that stuff. A lot of times your stuff just worked most of the time and it was clean. So
Yeah, and my partner who I'm working with now, and he's always available to you too. So I'll give you a Skype name, but he's really good in .NET, which started to get me to focus more on it. So at that point I wasn't, but I guess it's been 2 years now. And so I mean he's really process oriented, and even probably more so than me, which is very surprising to me. So he'll tell me when my ideas don't make sense. So we're good checks and balances. And then we have a UI guy and that's another question I have. How much do you use Andrew?
We use him a good bit, but from what it sounds like, Shannon wants to get the whole thing to use UI and everything.
Okay, because for me, like, when I'm designing, I'm very particular on everything from shadow. So I will, I'll go, drop shadow on a button. I will go over and over it until it's perfect. And I don't know like how Andrew works, so I don't know if I'd feel comfortable, flipping out on him because it's not perfect. So I have my UI guy. So that was a question that
Shannon likes your designs, so he's always liked your designs. So I think he wants to go everything with you. For the UI and the coding and everything.
Okay, that's good. And the guy I work with is actually a JavaScript genius, so a lot of the functionality that Shannon likes with like when he showed me Room Key a while back, a lot of that stuff is he can do that easily. So
that's great. That's good because we've always struggled with a lot of that.
Yeah,
with the jQuery and stuff like that.
Yeah, he's very good at that. I can just show you some fun sites that he's done for us, like our wedding site that was just it brings it to life. So
right. Okay. Okay, cool. All right. So most of them, and then sorting and everything, that seems to be working fine here. Background check, that's a whole different ballgame because we've got to get the background check system working before it even makes sense to build it in here. So we'll worry about that later.
Okay.
Cash credits, all that stuff seems to be fine. So what we'll do is, and these are a couple things that have been added since you were here. There's a new thing, and I think that's set. It's hard coded to I think if they've registered in the past 5 or 6 days, then it's going to mark them as new. And then American flag is if they were in the military.
Okay.
That's what that is.
So these candidates are still all American, correct?
What do you mean? Oh, the American flag doesn't. Yeah, that's kind of confusing. So that doesn't mean they're American. Just means they're in the military.
Okay, but are the candidates all U.S. based?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
So then, the flag will probably need to be changed. Because I was like, okay, are we adding, outside the country? So if everyone's U.S. based, then we'll do some like kind of a military or.
Well, I'll say this: be careful before we do that, or talk to Shannon because it was his idea to have the flag.
Mm-hmm.
And I know Wounded Warrior loved the flag.
Okay, and I mean,
so maybe it depends on who the user is, or maybe that's one of those things we have to customize based on the logged-in user.
Mm-hmm. In the current design, I left a flag. I guess maybe even a tooltip to understand it. But when I was coming from, I had no clue, what that meant.
And I agree. It doesn't really. You never know that's military if you're just a regular person.
Yeah.
So probably should think about that.
Mm-hmm.
Alright. We're good here, so I'm going to click on a user here. This looks really bad, clearly. I mean, check this out over here. So, this was never done. This is supposed to look good in Chrome.
Mm-hmm.
I don't ever use Chrome because I don't test in Chrome because the majority of users use Internet Explorer. So I try to test in Internet Explorer. So this does not obviously work in Internet Explorer. Very good.
Yeah.
That right there, clearly it goes over. And there's just a lot of, we just need to make this thing look better.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't look very professional.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But most of the data is showing up fine, except for right here, obviously. Things that are blank we need to make it look better. So, you have your employer. All this stuff just needs to be better. Like sometimes this thing will do a post back